Hello and welcome to Marginal Support, where support is anything but marginal. I am honored to have Sal with us today. Sal, why don't you just give yourself a brief introduction?
Yeah, pleasure to meet you. My name is Sal. I'm currently director of ops for a company here in Atlanta where we work on the marketing side for healthcare industries.
Very cool. I mean, the healthcare industry, I've seen that just explode recently in job postings and how startups are doing. I mean, it seems like it is a very active sector right now in terms of the way people are interacting with health online and virtually right now. It seems like a very exciting space to be in.
Yeah, the healthcare industry has blown up a lot. Especially, I think they're it's almost like they're catching up with what other places are doing. So they're introducing a lot of more technologies for a lot of places like nonprofits that help, like Alzheimer's associations and so forth. And so they're really trying to get up to speed to really help the community in different ways. And so we've seen a lot of growth in the healthcare industry, especially in tech, in the last 2, 3 years.
That's interesting. I'd be curious to get your thoughts on this. So I used to work for LG, which was in on the healthcare side, and they were doing a mixture of hardware and software. And for me, it was really hard to support the hardware side because you had to have someone go on site, you had to someone look at it. The software side was easy. What's your experience been with healthcare tech in terms of is stuff starting to skew a little more away from hardware side and going only software, or are you still seeing a mixture between the two?
I think there's still a mixture between the two overall. I have feel like I've seen a lot more standardization. I think what's been helping a lot. I think there's a lot of third-party companies doing it their own way, their own unique way, and that's it. And I think there's a lot more standardization so that it's easier to implement a lot of these things. I think there's also a lot of more bigger players that are coming out and absorbing smaller companies to really unify it. There's two sides of the coin. One person can say, well, that's not fair because you're taking the whole market. On the other side, it removes a lot of that logistics that occurs of I have to learn how to do A and B and C and D and so on. It's like, no, now we have to just do one or two. At the end of the day, we're helping the patients, we're helping the healthcare providers out there that are doing the real work.
Yeah, I mean, I think one area that I've seen a big improvement personally, this is in California, is I forget maybe 3 4 years ago, California passed a law that said medical records are now the patient's property instead of the hospital's property. And now with products like Oracle Cerner and Epic, now when you go from different providers, here you go from, let's say, a Sutter Health to UCSF, now those just flow instantly. So now it's so much easier to have patient care. I mean, is that the kind of standardization you're talking about where you're starting to see all the systems kind of line up with each other?
Yeah, no, yeah, for sure. I think that's exactly it. It's having the ability to be to carry your data over, and it's now becoming your data. And I think a lot of what we're noticing, example, where we're at, we try to use California as the baseline because I think they're really innovating on kind of the standardization for people's health and so forth. Now, personally, I don't work with direct patient data, so we're not on that side. But on the HCP side, we do work on with those with like Epic, for example, and we do a lot of integrations to really make it seamless across the board. So on the standardization, that's exactly it. It's being able to us as individuals don't have to go knock on our doctor's office, say, hey, can I get my medical records? Thank you for the folder, and then go somewhere else and then hope they wrote the notes down in the right places. Now it's I have my app, let me just transition, or I have my phone, I have my health app, I can just share the data over to my healthcare provider, which I think has helped tremendously and diagnose a lot of things quicker.
I mean, yeah, I mean, gone are the days where you go into these doctors' hospitals and you see just a wall of files right there, and you're just like,
Yeah.
okay, you guys don't like computers? That's
And you start
cool.
thinking, where does my folder end? I wonder where I'm at in this big wall.
Well, cool. I know that was, that's good just to kind of get some understanding where you're at, so we can, because I mean, I think what we're talking a lot about right here is how these systems are operated, how they're organized, and pretty much how are us as people going to lead these new operations. So I remember you told me that's a bit of your passion is leadership, operations. So can you just kind of, introduce me to why this is a passion of yours?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things when I first got into tech. So my background is in computer networking. I loved working in, well, I thought I was gonna love working in these huge databases in software. Then realized it was really lonely sitting in the server room by yourself while the AC fans are running in the background. You're freezing cold, and I was like, yeah, I don't think this is for me. And so I started getting into CX, and I fell in love with it. But I really quickly realized that people were kind of just winging it, which is awesome. But at the same time, there needs to be some sort of structure. And I just fell in love with the idea. I like to look at it as Legos. It's like I'm building the blocks of a department, of a team, and finding ways to optimize or find ways to work less but smarter. Be able to achieve better results without having to do three, four times the same work. And so since then, I've been working a lot on the support side, on the customer success side, on implementation teams, and really building them. And as I started seeing how quickly we can finalize projects or how quickly we can resolve tickets because of just minor operational changes, and it builds satisfaction not only because we made something quicker, but the customers also felt it at the end of the day. They're like, oh my God, our issues are not being resolved faster. Our implementation projects are now half as long. And then you start getting strategy like first value, second value, communications, and you find ways so that the customer gets their ROI much quicker. And we found that when teams really have operational focus from the beginning, their churn rate at the end drops over time. The satisfaction of their customers increases over time. Their NPS scores go up. Well, everybody kind of focuses on the metrics of time to resolution or first response. I think these are all key values to determine how things are running. I think before that, you really need to set the structure in the operations to really build that customer lifeline or life cycle along the journey. So seeing things like that really became a passion of mine and seeing the value delivered. And then at the end of the day, it also relieves a lot of headaches from the internal teams. Instead of somebody having to do the exact same task over and over and over again, let's operationally change it. Let's make it more efficient. And it made everybody's life a lot easier and less stressful so we can focus on bigger things.
Yeah, I think you are saying what I've heard a lot of people say, honestly, in terms of, um, let's say 5, 10 years ago, support ops was something that people only thought, oh, that might be nice to have, or that's a cute idea. Now, many leaders I talk to say support ops is a necessity in their company. And I think that's a very good shift we're seeing. Um, because like you're saying, there are days when like everyone would have to come in and learn from scratch again. And so you start, you need people that are come in and they're going to start standardizing people. For you, it sounds like you've experienced this, but I'm just curious to hear an example of how did you go into a messy environment and brings a little bit of order to that chaos when you really start to think there needs to be operational steps in place here.
Yeah, I think it's fun but not fun when you jump into a new team or a new company or a new location and everything is on fire. And really finding out what is the best way to make it easier or help. And it really starts on depending on the scenario, but it could be as simple as updating job descriptions. Let's make sure that everyone knows what we're accountable for. Who's holding the hot potato at what time, and at what time do you hand it off? Also building, at least on an employment side or a team size, what's the career path afterwards? What happens when you move forward? What can the individual, the employee look forward to? And really setting those stages, setting those steps along the way helps tremendously. On the customer side though, I think laying out a whole floor chart, as simple as laying it all out, get a whiteboard and just fill it out from start to finish. What are the steps, and question every step. Do we need that? Do we not need that? Do we need other guardrails in between? How can we hold our customer's hand without making them feel like we're holding their hands? And I think there's a lot of little strategic things you can do in between. I think in my personal opinion, the days of trying to solve things as quickly as possible by looking at the time for resolution KPI and making it as small as possible are kind of go away. At least I recommend it because you sacrifice a lot in that area. When you're just trying to solve things as quickly as possible, you end up running into a situation where customer feels unheard of. They feel like they're not being listened to. They feel like they're just being kicked off the curve. So instead of doing that, say, hey, you know what? Let's focus on what brings the highest satisfaction to the customer as a client overall, while doing it as more as efficient as possible. And then naturally speed will follow into that based on the end result that you're looking for.
Just to kind of boil down what you're saying, and this is something that I'm personally a huge champion of. It sounds like you want everyone to really understand the why
Yes.
before they start to solve the what.
Yeah.
He's like, you're saying, if you just try to go headfirst into the what, but you don't understand the why, it's worthless. Pretty much, you could come to the wrong example, you could come to the wrong conclusion, and that's just going to prolong things even more.
Yeah.
The other thing that I think that you said that really speaks to me is career paths. Because, in the past it was, I'm an individual contributor. I'm going to go to tier 1, tier 2, or I'm a manager. And that's what that's all it is. How do you see now the support ops is coming more mainstream? How do you see that changing how people shape their career?
Yeah, I think it comes down at the end of the day, it really starts with the leader of the department itself. And for example, with my teams, what I do is I actually have multiple career paths. Well, days of going from tier 1 to tier 2 to tier 3, and then you become a lead and all that fun stuff. I think that's really that's a way to look about it. The way I go to my teams is, okay, there's a few things. Do you want to go leadership? Do you want to go sales? Do you want to do customers? Or do you want to be left alone? And instead of picturing the role itself, you picture the environment that the individual wants. Because a lot of time people starting at tier 1, tier 2, especially early in their career, they don't know what a manager does. They don't know what a director does. They don't know what CSMs do or implementation consultants, but they know what they like. And if you start it and if you position the career path at what the individual desires, then you can add a role to it. So if somebody says, I love talking to customers all day, I love interacting with them, it's so much fun. I don't know how I feel about all the technical stuff, but I love talking to them. Okay, in that case, there's a career path. After you learn maybe tier 1 and you understand the culture, you can go into the CSM route. It'll make you a strong technical CSM. Even though you don't like technical, you already did it for some time. Now you understand the issues they're having and you get to talk with customers. Or you can go as an SDR. Or if they say, you know what, I like to be left alone. I like to do my own thing. I like to just solve issues. Cool. Then the tier 2 to tier 3 path is perfect for you. But if then they say, I like building things. I love Legos. I love constructing things. I like finding things that are broken. I love leading people towards success. Maybe leadership is your route. And sometimes you don't have to go tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 leadership. You can go tier 1 straight to leadership. It just depends, obviously, on the industry where you are. But I'm a big advocate of stop putting the title on the person, start listening to what they love and care, and then you give them the career path so they can feel success. There's that quote that we hear all the time, people don't leave companies because of salary, they leave because of bad managers or bad culture. And I think if as managers or as leaders, we focus on the individual in that area, I think everything else just naturally flows. And I've seen in my experience that you have higher employee retention, more happier individuals internally, and in turn, they result that onto the customers and just everybody wins. And it's just a simple one-on-one conversation that you have to have with them.
I absolutely love that. I mean, I think that is, it goes back to just being people first, right? I mean, if in your one-on-ones or whenever you're talking to these people, if you truly listen to what they like, then when opportunities come up, you can direct them saying, hey, I was talking to the engineering manager or I was talking to the sales manager the other day and they had this role and that sounds perfect for you. So I think good leaders should also be happy when people leave their teams.
Yes.
So and I know other leaders feel the same way, and I'd love to get your opinion on this. I feel that a good leader, not a good manager, but a good leader is someone who elevates his people. And whether that means elevating them through your team or elevating them through someone else's team, that's where true leadership is.
I agree 100%. A quote that I have with my team is my role here at this company as a leader is to make you better than I am today. If I can't coach you to replace my job, then I have failed as a leader. If I have not coached you to be able to fulfill another open role, then I have failed as a leader, because I should really be able to empower my team, teach them, grow them. At least maybe I can't teach them all the nuances, but give them avenues, give them direction so that they can learn that and move that direction. I think good leadership is when you put people first and then you give them a path towards success. Because as managers, leaders, whatever the role we want to utilize, we've been around the block a few times. We've scratched our heads, we smacked our head on a keyboard at the very beginning. And I was like, if I can save a year or two from my team of headaches, and but still results to excellent results, then it's a win. That's at the end of the day, that's the passion, that's the desire that one longs for.
That's really great to hear. So I was just thinking about this. I'm curious on your opinion because this, when you said you're in medical, it just got my brain thinking a little bit. Also, how hard is it for people that have never worked in the medical field or never have any history working in anything, medicine related? How hard is it them to come into a role and get up to speed? Like, let's say they come from a tech or they're coming from a fintech or wherever. How hard has it been for you for people to come into this field and really catch up and get up to speed?
It's, it's, you have to really come into it if you've not experienced the medical field, so if you've never been in the healthcare industry or anything like that, you first need to come in with a very open mind in the sense of anything you've learned in fintech or in SaaS or in product, grab that and put it aside for a minute. And you have to learn the industry. So you have to understand what are MPIs, what are healthcare providers, how are they managed, whether you are or aren't under HIPAA, what is HIPAA? So a lot of these legal aspects and the understanding is critical. And it is going to be a little confusing at first because it's very different than anything else that is out there. I mean, I've worked in fintech, I've worked in SaaS, I've worked with MSPs, and they all kind of borrow from each other in some way or fashion. Healthcare is just a whole different animal in itself. Is it complicated? No, it's not. Well, unless you get into all the deep end stuff, which is a whole different ballgame. But getting into the industry itself, especially tied with tech, isn't necessarily hard. It's just a different playing field. So really understanding, I highly recommend, maybe there's plenty of videos or stuff out there of what is healthcare, how do healthcare providers function, what is an MPI, what do they have to do, things like that are really helpful. Once you kind of get the lay of the land, and I would say if about 3 months or so, then things start piecing together and then it becomes kind of easier and you can then start bringing in what you've learned in other industries into it. But it is definitely a learning curve, but it's not a complicated one. It's just a different thought process.
I think so. Like I previously said, when I was working at LG, we were trying to sell a camera that would sit on top of TVs in hospital rooms, and then it would basically be virtual care. Well, when they started to transition away from that, we started to look at other things we could do in the medical field, and I had to start learning about everything in healthcare and healthcare tech. And I think one of the hardest things for me to understand was, wait a minute, there are companies that you have a doctor doing a prescription, and then you have a pharmacy getting the prescription, and then you have this middle player that all they do is talk to the people in the middle, and they make a killing. I'm like, wait, what? That's how healthcare works? This is like, it was blowing my mind how many little segments there are in healthcare. So I can absolutely understand if someone comes in and they've never done anything, they're like, what is this Wild West here? What's everything going on? What was the experience you had when you first got into healthcare?
I think honestly, what was the most simplest concept, but was the biggest wow, is even just the fact of like healthcare providers having MPIs and how that follows them along the journey. Like that was something that never occurred to me. That was something that they follow. And also specifically when it comes to like retirement homes, home cares, things like that, how quickly the industry shifts. Things get bought out and sold so quickly. And it was very eye-opening, like, whoa, there is a whole industry here that I had no knowledge of. When I think of retirement homes, like, oh yeah, there's a retirement home down the street. But then now that I'm behind the scenes and I'm seeing all the logistics around it, these retirement homes, at least on the business level, turn around so quickly. The communication between that and like Medicare or communication to healthcare insurance, there's so many jumps that occur behind the scenes. And so it's also sort of putting into place kind of why healthcare in some areas is expensive. It's because there's all these middle grounds or touch points that have to occur, and then somebody has to pick up that cost. And so there's a good, there's the bad, there's the ugly. But it really opened up the picture of what exactly kind of happens behind the scenes, all the loops that it occurs, all the regulations that has to happen. And I think for the most part, they're good things. I think having a Wild Wild West healthcare will probably not be the best idea. But I also feel like there could be some operational efficiencies that could have occurred in the process as well.
Yeah, now that you mentioned retirement homes, I kind of had the same before I started getting into this time. I'm like, oh, retirement homes, retirement home. Then I started to learn the difference between long-term memory care, a SNF, like, was it a living assisted home? And I'm like, oh, there's so many different things there. And then like seeing this, like how ownership changes in SNFs almost seems like daily.
Yes.
And then the level of care there, you're like, I would not want a loved one to have to experience like one of these poorly run SNFs, because it is just like it's basically just like a kennel. I mean, I'm sorry if that's, a bad image, but that's kind of
Yeah.
how I see these versus assisted living facilities.
Yeah, it's very eye opening in that regards. When you start really getting introduced to that, which in a way sadly makes you also care more, because you're like, you know what, let me actually try to make a difference, because at the end of the day, there are people that need these assisted living. There's people who need this help, and so let me see what I can do, even if it's validating, making sure the data is as accurate as possible, so that when somebody goes out there, they're finding the right facility for them. Even minor things like that. So I do feel like being exposed to this area and in healthcare and understanding it also gives you a little bit more of care towards what's happening, and try to make it a little bit better for whoever's looking for that help.
That's well spoken. I want to change directions a little bit right here, because I would be remiss if I didn't talk about how what AI is doing right now to the entire support industry and operations. I'm curious, how do you see AI making operations either more efficient or changing how people look at operations in the CX world?
I think I'm personally a huge advocate for AI to be utilized as a tool, not as a replacement. And I think what I'm seeing in the industry personally is a lot of companies are introducing AI to replace either jobs or replace tasks. And as I understand the concept, you run a huge risk by doing so, because people can tell. You can get a message and you can be like, there's soul missing in this message. There's character missing. This was not done by a human. And that can really destroy a brand. It can really lower a brand credibility if that becomes too consistent. On the operational side, though, I think it helped for me personally. It saves me hundreds of hours. So, for example, if I need to build an SOP for a particular processee in a department that I'm working on, and I actually was writing about this the other day. Well, before the days where you'd have to sit on your laptop for 8 to 10 hours and build an SOP document, and you're typing it all out and then you're QAing it. I'm struggling to find an hour of my day, nevertheless, 8 hours, 16 hours to write an SOP. I now utilize AI instead of say, you know what, let me build my template. And then I just grab my phone, do a voice memo, and record how I think it should work. What are the stakeholders? What are the process? What does it mean? What does it does mean? And talking verbally is works so much better. And so then I just use AI to combine the two. Hey, now that I have this, I want you to read my transcript, format it into this SOP template, go. Then I go get my coffee, come back, and at least the bones are built. And things like that has saved me hundreds of hours that normally in the past would have to require me to sit there and type it. So using AI tools as a tool can be very beneficial, also with analytical data and wireframe and job descriptions. But it's when it's used as a replacement of things that you run in some muddy waters potentially.
I completely agree. In a previous conversation I had, another leader described this as good lazy and bad lazy, where bad lazy is where you are pretty much taking something and you're just saying, okay, hands off, I'm going to let it do whatever I want it to do. Good lazy is what you're talking about. You give it the frame, you give it the groundwork, right? And then you let it kind of fill in the blanks for you. One thing I've noticed is how important prompting is these days in terms of how strong your prompts are. What have you seen in terms of like, yes, you now we just can't be very vague. What have you noticed in terms of how important actually putting specifically what you want, contributes to the end product?
Yeah, I think it matters tremendously. And I think I actually will challenge it. And it goes beyond prompting. So, for example, I love using Claude. If you saw my cloud environment, I have skills designed to do so many things, so it really builds it in the way that I need to be built. So if you like, good lazy and bad lazy, on the bad lazy side, if you're just saying, "Hey, fix this for me," it's gonna fix it, but it's not gonna be the way you want it. But prompting it correctly, telling it what the end goal is, what are the parameters, what do you want it to do and not to do, what are keywords that you want to utilize. Additionally, also having skills behind the scenes that are going to format the document in the way that you need it. It's going to do research. And then one thing that I don't see enough is that no matter what result the AI agent gives, people aren't reviewing it itself. They take it as gospel and then just go with it. And I have been like, did anybody read this after it's been done? This is actually, I would rather just not have done anything at all. So I highly recommend that no matter what you utilize and use AI to generate, to prompt, if that's a correct my spelling, or analyze this Excel document and give me the breakdowns or write the SOP, always dedicate time to go back and just review it. It takes an extra 5 minutes and it's going to save you a world of embarrassment or issues along the way.
So what I did recently, I wanted to get a feedback on an episode that I did. So I uploaded the video file and I said, "Hey, look at this and then give me your thoughts on it." And it came back and just hallucinating like crazy. It wasn't even the transcript and everything. And I'm like, "What are you doing here?" He's like, "Well, this is what you gave." I'm like, "No, this is absolutely not what I gave you." And so I completely agree. If you just dump it in there, like, "Okay, everything's good," you are in for a world of hurt. I mean, so
100%. Yeah.
and I can definitely see how dangerous that would be, especially in the healthcare world. If you're just like, "Oh, here's a whole bunch of data, analyze it," and then you just go run off with it, that could be literally life or death for people.
Yeah.
Strong QA processes are absolutely needed right now. One thing that I've also seen, I'd love to get your opinion on this, is that there are some people that are hesitant to try AI, or maybe it's a little too big for them. They don't know where to start. What's your advice to people who want to jump in, specifically on the ops side, but they just don't know where to start? How can they start to educate themselves, or where do you think is a good jumping in point for them?
Yeah, I think I will say that I'm a huge advocate for AI. I also acknowledge that AI in some way might not be for everybody. I think if you, like example, if you're in HVAC and you're fixing that and you are a master of the trade, AI is probably not going to be top of mind. But if you're in tech, if you're in any kind of corporate side, I think the first thing is you should ask yourself, what is something that I hate doing that I keep doing all the time? And in once you have that one thing, all right, maybe just Google, can AI do this? Can I use ChatGPT and choose Claude? It doesn't matter which AI agent you use if you're starting out. You can use Claude, Gemini, ChatGPT, doesn't matter. But just start playing with it, get familiarized with it. I think the way that that in the house when it first came out, we started to learn it by having it generate coloring pictures. Can you create me a coloring page that is, a person next to a tree and so forth? And then you see that power. And I think it's not about the image itself. It's about getting comfortable with seeing the power that is literally on your hands and the power that's on your laptop that it can generate. And so it starts spinning the new ideas like, oh, if it can generate a picture, can you review this document? Can you explain what this legal document means? And start utilizing little by little in that way. There's really no wrong way of using AI as long as you are intentional about it. It's like saying there's no wrong way to how to use a pencil or a pen as long as you're intentionally using it. But it's just getting familiar with it, just playing with it over time. And if you're really interested, do some quick searches on YouTube. Ask a neighbor. Something that I personally do with the close friends and people around me is I like hosting little AI sessions at my house. Coming from the Hispanic community, tech isn't a big thing that comes up in my personal culture. And so I was like, you know what? I want to share this. So we do little like monthly get togethers and I share them little prompts, things to do. And it's made a world of a difference for them, especially for business owners who are starting out. They don't have to maybe hire that person at the very beginning when they're short on cash. They can utilize AI to help them along the way. So getting curious, on error, there's no wrong answer. Worst case scenario, tell it to generate a coloring page for you. It's a great way to start.
I love that. That is such a good way just to get your hands basing into it and get your feet wet. Okay, we are coming up almost on our time here, but as we're finishing up, wrapping up, what is an idea or what is something that you want everyone to know either about operations, CX, AI, healthcare? What is basically your ending message to everyone right here?
I think that when we're living in a world full of I think there's a huge fear that's going to take everyone's job or it's going to have this. And I actually say that it's not going to. I think that people who, if you really want to be ahead in the market and really grow as an individual, get in front of it and be strategic. I think strategic is something that cannot be replaced. It's the human element of it. And when it comes to operations, find ways to be efficient in that area. But if specifically in corporate or in companies, look at the beginning and the end, question every single step, and make sure that you're doing things because they need to be done, not because it's always been done that way. A process that was developed 20 years ago is probably not gonna work efficiently today, and even a process that was built a year ago is probably not gonna be as efficient today. So always reiterate, always question the norm, always ask yourself, is this the best way? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. It doesn't hurt to try, and kind of go from there.
I mean, I think that's wonderful advice. I mean, question everything and try everything. Lovely. So I will end this on the way I end Mishos, and I think you can probably relate to this. And is what I say is that support isn't just a job; it's a mindset. And so what I mean by that is that you learn skills and you learn traits that you can take and carry over to anything else. So, and I think that's very true today. Well, Sal, it was an absolute pleasure having you on today. And I hope we can stay in contact.
For sure, it's been a pleasure. Have a fantastic day.
All right, bye.